I'm joined by Helen and Andrew, two of this evening's performers, who are going to tell me a little bit about tonight's concert programme. So, Andrew, tell us about your Josquin disc.
Oh, we're really excited about this. Decca Classics approached us with the idea of putting together 3 discs over, I think, 5 years, marking some important anniversaries of composers. So 2021, this year, commemorates the 500th anniversary of the death of Josquin. And so our album marking that has just been released, and it'll be followed by discs commemorating Bird and Palestrina. So the Josquin disc, the idea behind the disc in a way is just to give a kind of overview of the things that Josquin was able to do. I mean, Decca, if you like, would wanted it to be, you know, the one Josquin disc that you would need. If you only had one Josquin disc, it should be this. And obviously the masses are central to what he did, so we really wanted to sing one of the masses. And the Missa Pangelingua, which is the centerpiece of the disc, is his best known mass, also his last mass almost certainly. And actually hasn't had a really sort of significant recording from a concert group for quite a while, so it was ripe for re-recording. And then we found this wonderful piece by Jacques de Mantua that you heard at the end of our concert, which quotes all sorts of Josquin motets in 5 or 6 parts, everything that he quotes. And there's quite a lot of evidence that it was those 5 and 6 part motets that were particularly kind of seized on by composers of later generations, and those are the pieces that were really kind of kept in the repertory. So alongside the Jacques, we really wanted to do at least a couple of those, and then it was really a question of what scorings would work with our forces. So we have the Salve Regina and Inviolata that go with that. We have also the famous early Ave Maria in 4 parts, one of Josquin's most famous pieces. And then on the other side of things, we have some secular music as well. So we have El Grillo, the Frottola, very silly piece, and we found an unrecorded chanson which has at least a decent claim to be by Josquin, Vivrai-je toujours. So that gets its premiere recording on the disc as well.
So Helen, how's the last year been for you as a singer?
Well, it's definitely fair to say it's been a different year, definitely, as it has for everybody, of course. But yeah, it's been a strange one actually. I think particularly from, so in fact February we were out in the States. We had a little tour, had a really great time. Came back, and then a few weeks later, everything sort of kicked off. And before we knew it, we were sat at home a lot, and a lot more than usual. So I think we had tours. We were meant to be going to California and Japan and all sorts of other places, and they were all suddenly taken out the diary, and we're stuck at home, homeschooling kids, most of us, and things like the joys of that. So it's been tricky, but I think one thing that's been really nice, apart from actually having a bit more time at home, which in some ways has been good, we also kind of, it was really nice to kind of feel that as a group we were quite resilient and resourceful, and came up with sort of new ways of doing things, new ways of doing concerts, new ways of performing together, new ways of coming up with programs, and just interesting projects. And it's quite nice to have a kind of group enthusiasm for still making sure we could do something despite all the problems.
So in that really deep period of lockdown in kind of March, April, May, there was still a lot of conversations going on with future plans and things like that. Absolutely.
So we were starting, obviously at the time none of us really quite knew how long things were going to last or what was going to happen next. So we were sort of planning and thinking about the future, but we also did put together a little lockdown project. I kind of feel like everyone had their little lockdown project. And we did Speminalium because we thought, you know, let's go big, let's go ambitious. And it's also, obviously, Tallis is an amazing motet that's in 40 parts, so it's not a piece that we could ever normally perform, being a 12-voice group. So we each recorded a number of the parts, and then our long-suffering tenor Ben spent probably many hundreds of hours stitching it all together and getting rid of all the outtakes, which included things like people's children walking in and dogs barking, and I think a cuckoo clock going off in someone's house. So there were a lot of outtakes from that as well.
I did enjoy watching that one, watching that one online. So since last summer, obviously, we've been allowed to do concerts again, socially distanced concerts, sometimes online and sometimes with audience, but obviously most concerts have been online since then. How's the whole moving to an online concert been like for you?
It's a really different energy, isn't it? You don't get that kind of frisson that you get from walking out in front of an audience. So we work quite hard to kind of try and make it feel like a concert. You know, it's really tempting to think, well, you know, I could just re-record this if it doesn't go well, and then you don't get the right sort of feeling. So for us, it's really important, and I think for people at home, they deserve to have a sort of concert experience to see people going through the same sort of process of excitement and relaxation at the end and all the rest of it. So we're trying really hard to give that sort of feeling. When we have to stand in different ways, and certainly we're standing more in a circle now because that's the easiest way to deal with the situation, that of course feels a little bit more self-contained and looking inwards. So I think we have to work doubly hard to make sure the energy is still going out.
And Helen, what are the challenges of performing socially distanced?
Well, of course, the biggest challenge, of course, is we have to be much further apart than we normally would be. So we normally would be maybe not quite shoulder to shoulder, but pretty much, as close as comfortable, really. And normally it's something we sort of try and get as close together as possible in this space. Particularly important for a group like ours because we don't have a conductor. So we really rely on our ears and our eyes. And I think the main challenge has just been getting used to being further apart, and probably that often means using our eyes even more than our ears. You can't always trust what comes back from a long distant echo from depending on the size of the acoustic in a church. So it's mostly from just doing that really, and it's actually been really interesting. We were just saying it's quite we've sort of quite enjoyed it actually. There's some things that are actually sort of better and more interesting, and it does sort of we have to work a bit harder, I think, at quieter dynamics. You have to really trust that everybody is definitely going to go with the quieter dynamic a little bit more than you would if you were right next to each other. But I think it can sound quite exciting as well.
And Andrew, what are the challenges for you with this different way of singing, much more spaced out?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think you hear your own voice much more, which can be nice. It can also, sometimes it's nice in a group like this to feel how you're fitting into the blend, and it's harder to do that. We tried all sorts of different formations as the rules have evolved and so on. The Josquin recording actually was made quite early in the course of the pandemic, sort of in the summer, in the early summer, and so we were still in a very big, wide circle there. We've never recorded anything like that before. We certainly haven't recorded in a circle. So it's probably worth saying, recording engineers are also running around after us, trying to figure out how to mic any given setup we're doing.
So moving back to this evening's programme, Helen, which piece in this programme is particularly special to you?
I've really enjoyed getting to know all of it because I didn't know an awful lot of Josquin before. We'd done a few pieces in the group, but my passion lies 50 years later, which is really. But actually, I've loved getting to know all of it. But I particularly really love the motet in Violata, which is one of the motets in praise of Mary, and I just think it has such a beautiful kind of radiant sonority. It's such a lovely sort of happy piece. And it's all about Mary being unblemished and chaste, and it's just interesting the way Josquin uses this kind of lovely high major tonality to kind of portray that. And the bit at the end when he has these three statements of O Benigna, O Regina, O Maria, so O kind one, O Queen, O Mary, and he sort of sets them as little standalone little statements, and it's really interesting to see how he sort of does that sort of direct call to Mary.
And Andrew, for you in this programme, which piece is particularly special?
Yeah, I love In Violata as well, but you've taken that one, so I'll go with the Salve Regina, which I talked about a little bit in the concert as well. I'm sort of with Helen that the music that most obviously connects with me from this period is maybe 50 years later, and I think that's because it feels somehow more obviously rhetorical, like the gestures of the words and the kind of big statements at certain times. Just that's still kind of how we speak now as musicians, in whatever way. That for me is the kind of the essence of the Renaissance, really. So this music that is just coming into that world can be a little bit hard to get under the skin of. So one of the things I've quite enjoyed is learning a bit more about how the music works inside, and that helps me to understand why one note follows another in a particular way. So the Salve Regina, which has some really interesting stuff going on structurally, you've got the top part, which is basically a paraphrase of the Plainsong hymn. You've got this inner part which just repeats the same music over and over again, and then against those constraints he still manages to put together this extraordinarily freewheeling music. So sort of seeing how he's navigating that I find really, really interesting.
Helen and Andrew, thank you very much for sharing the music with us.
Thank you.